Hi there. I'm so excited to welcome you to the Arthritis Life podcast, where we share arthritis life stories and tips for thriving with autoimmune arthritis. My name is Cheryl Crow, and I am passionate about helping people navigate real life with arthritis beyond joint pain. I've been living with rheumatoid arthritis for 20 years, and I'm also a mom, occupational therapist, video creator, support group leader, and I created the Room to Thrive self-management program. I am so excited to help you live a more empowered life with arthritis. We're going to cover everything from kitchen life hacks to navigating the healthcare system to coping with friends who just don't get it. Seriously, no topic is going to be off limits on this podcast. My interviewees and I share our honest stories of how chronic illness affects our lives. This includes discussions about mental health, sex, shame, pregnancy, body image, advocacy, self-acceptance, and so much more. You'll hear stories from all ends of the spectrum, from a person who's living in medicated remission from psoriatic arthritis to somebody living with severe mobility restrictions and severe pain from rheumatoid arthritis. You'll hear how people manage their conditions in different ways, like medications, mindfulness, movement, social support, work accommodations, and so much more. You'll also hear from rheumatology experts who just get it. We'll dive deep into the science behind chronic pain and what's the latest evidence for lifestyle changes that can help you thrive with arthritis, including exercise, sleep, nutrition, stress reduction, and more. This is your chance to sit down and chat with a friend who's been there. Ready to figure out how to manage your arthritis life? Let's get started.
Yeah, I'm so excited today to have back for the fourth time, actually, Cristina Montoya, a registered dietitian who also has lived experience with arthritis. And we're going to be talking today about building a healthy relationship with food while living with rheumatoid arthritis or a similar condition. So welcome, Cristina. It's so good to see you again.
Well, thank you so much for having me back and for your trust. I really appreciate that.
Yes.
I'm a registered dietitian. I'm based in Canada, but I was trained in Colombia. So I'm bilingual. I'm a bilingual dietitian, and I'm the founder of Arthritis Dietitian.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, first of all, it's just, the people who've listened for a long time know that, like, of all the lifestyle interventions for rheumatoid arthritis and just autoimmune diseases in general, on a personal and an intellectual level, I find diet and nutrition to be the most confusing and overwhelming at times. So I really there's so much misinformation out there. So when I met you, quote unquote, met online, I was like, it was like a breath of fresh air because I'm like, this is somebody who gets it from a lived experience standpoint and has the research and training to back it up. And you're not making a lot of what other kind of some people in this space will make these claims like, all you have to do is just heal your gut and you won't have arthritis anymore. There's just so much to untangle there. But I just wanted to put a little plug for previous episodes because we're not going to go through. If you want to hear more about your long story, we always talk about the diagnosis saga and stuff like that. They can go to episode 68 or 163. But just for today, can you give the listeners a brief summary of like how and when you got diagnosed and maybe a little bit on your treatment journey?
Yeah, basically, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and Sjogren's syndrome back then, in 20 years ago. Luckily, now it's changed to Sjogren's disease, and so well deserved. But when I first started, just someone who was young in her early 20s, it was very difficult diagnosis, full of uncertainty, fear, and pain. A lot of pain. And I think, like I said, not to repeat everything that, like all the story that I already shared with you and your audience, it's what I can say, it's been a journey. And at first, I felt I would not be able to cope with this disease. I felt like my life just ended when I was in my early 20s. I think that was the hardest thing to go through. And as I accepted the treatments or the new therapies that came along for rheumatoid arthritis, I started to see the light that they said, okay, I accepted that it was a chronic illness that had no cure, but I also have to take control of, okay, what is it that I can work with my rheumatologist to improve my quality of life. And I can say that 20 years later, right? So at first, I know it's so scary when you first get diagnosed and your life completely changes. So I feel that was kind of my biggest fear when I was diagnosed so young. And in fact, 20 years ago in Colombia, we didn't have all the treatments. They were just starting. But I still opened my mind to see, okay, I want the treatment. I want to feel better. I still couldn't prevent the deformations. I have the damage of my joint. But what I always want to bring to my clients is you don't have to go through this damage because we have so much treatments, so different treatments that at least we can try. So that's why maybe my conversations are starting to feel a little different because I already kind of went through that painful part of the initial journey. Now it's more about, okay, how I'm going to live the rest of another 20 years with these diseases.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. And the reason you kind of, if those who are watching the YouTube video, you kind of smiled a little bit when you said the word acceptance, because before we started recording, I was telling Christina about how I'm in the middle of writing a book about acceptance. And it's ironic because it's like almost like my reluctant journey towards acceptance, or like my reluctant love affair with acceptance. Because at first I'm like, I think it's very normal, like you're saying, to just think, oh my gosh, my life's over, or I can't handle this, or I just need to fix it or make it go away. And then there's this paradoxical power of acceptance when you actually kind of start envisioning a life in harmony with, yeah, these are things that are going to affect my life and my health in a negative way at times, but I still could develop a toolbox of tools to proactively, and evidence-based tools to actually manage the condition. So that's really exciting. And we often talk about how we're RA twins because we're the same age, diagnosed at the same time. We both have one child. Our kids are a little different age. Mine's just turned 12, but we're moms to a boy. So we're boy
Yeah,
moms.
that's
And,
so funny.
but yeah, it's a little bit of it's apples and oranges. It's not a perfect case comparison, but I was put on early aggressive treatment. I was really privileged to have not only be in the United States where these drugs were available, but with a really good health insurance that covered them, right? Because that can be a barrier even if you live in the United States. And I have very mild deformities. And again, it's apples and oranges. We don't really know what, in your case, like if you had gone on the treatment, maybe you had treatment resistant RA or something. But both of us, there's a lot of people in the wellness space who are very anti-medication. And I think, as people have heard me say ad nauseum, the evidence is just so strong in favor of medications. It's really like a both and, like medications and lifestyle changes, not or. But yeah, sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, but I think that's so important because we tend to compare ourselves to other patients. So then let's say someone who maybe you yourself, like you present with like minimal deformities or joint damage, they will say like, how come I'm not like her? We were basically the same age, the same height even.
Yes,
And it's still our journeys are completely different. So I always reinforce that idea that you have to think about that is your journey. You can't compare yourself to others. Even if you are using the same medication, your response might be different.
100%. Yeah. And if you could just give people a quick insight, then I'm really curious, what made you want to become a registered dietitian? And, and we're going to delve more into, again, building a healthy relationship with food, but what made you want to become a registered dietitian?
I wanted to become a registered dietitian back home because I was more interested about food security. I was interested about what are the ways or the programs that I could be involved in developing to ensure that everyone had access to healthy food and affordable food. And that was back in Colombia. So that was really my first call when it came to studying nutrition. I admit it had nothing to do with my diagnosis of arthritis because back then we were not so open to talk about our illnesses. We actually wanted to hide those illnesses because we didn't want to look different, or we didn't want to maybe miss opportunities because they will see you, oh, no, you have arthritis. No, I don't think you're going to work with us. So at that time, and I also grew up in a small town. We didn't have a lot of resources. So that really spoke to me. I love going up to like rural areas where we brought like bags of food and we created this program. So that's why when kind of moving forward back in 2020, that's when you started your support groups as well. And I started thinking about what is my role as a dietitian in the arthritis world. And here's when there was a lot of contrast because around this time is when all the explosion of the autoimmune protocols and these restricted diets came along. But I still had in my heart, and I said, why are we eliminating food? Like the body needs nutrition. Why are we restricting it? And so that's why my message always was contrary to what was surfacing. And at that time, I felt that I couldn't fight that because people wanted to restrict and to go and starve themselves, basically trying to fight the disease. And so that's where I started doing like a switch to see, okay, what if I can maybe use those principles that everyone should have access to affordable, safe foods to nourish themselves and apply to the management of arthritis that can also be aligned, supportive of the arthritis treatment. And mind you, that even maybe 5 and up to 10 years ago, rheumatologists wouldn't accept nutrition as part of a complementary therapy. They wouldn't. And now we have holistic rheumatologists. And it's in that it is accepted that lifestyle choices are also part of the treatment. And so I will say that's my transition. I never said, oh my God, I want to be a dietitian for the arthritis dietitian. This is how I was born. No, it was also a journey of again, self acceptance. And I said, well, it's arthritis right now doesn't have a cure. But from my lived experience and my clinical expertise, what can I contribute to the management of these diseases?
100%. I mean, that's another way. I didn't even think about this till right now, how similar our stories are, because I had the same thing where I was really concerned with the misinformation I was seeing and also just the lack, even if people had the health literacy not to kind of fall prey to misinformation, it was just, they aren't given hardly any support, right? You get diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and you're told just come back in 3 months, take this medication and come back in 3 months. And again, medications are very helpful, but most people have a lot of questions and a lot of interest in delving into what else can I do other than taking my medication? Should I exercise? Should I meditate, manage my stress? Should I eat something different? And I've surveyed unofficially a lot of rheumatologists and I'm like, what is the number one lifestyle medicine question you get in your clinic? And not surprisingly, they all say diet. Everyone wants to know, what diet should I do? And like you said, there's a real danger in a super restrictive mindset around food. So your job isn't just like the job of a registered dietitian in my head is not just being like, oh, here's like a set of facts around the evidence for this food matching your unique health condition or conditions, plural, but it's helping people psychologically navigate their relationship with food. So yeah. How do you do that? Like, how do you help? In your words, before we started talking, you said you wanted to talk about how you help women with inflammatory arthritis build a sustainable and healthy relationship with food. How do you?
Yeah.
That sounds like a tall order, but it's really important.
Well, it's so how it really started is because every time I have a client, I always felt that they needed permission to eat something. It was just something as simple. I really enjoy a glass of milk, but everything online, TikTok, everyone is telling me naturopaths that I need to eliminate dairy products. But I said, but I always loved my glass of milk in the morning and it didn't bother me, didn't do anything. And I eliminated for 3 months. And they'll literally feel like miserable that they were missing something that they truly enjoyed. And I said to them, what if for this week, I'll give you permission to have that glass of milk? And a week later, I talked to them and I said, hey, I feel great. I had nothing. I didn't have diarrhea. I didn't have abdominal pain. I was fine because it never really bothered me. And so all these conversations that happened with my clients, because I always, more than giving them a list of foods to avoid or foods or best foods or worst foods, I wanted to understand was their relationship with food, like what type of diets they had gone through. what are really their beliefs when it comes to nutrition? What do they have access? Do they have access to even all the list, all the anti-inflammatory foods, quote unquote, that they recommend? Do you even like it? Do you like having like coconut oil all day? That's not really good to your And so we forget that we are social beings, that food is part of that social culture, and that foods and any recommendations that you give should align to your food preferences, to your culture. What do you enjoy? How is that going to fit within your family, that what you're eating can also be feeding your kids? And so lately, like over the past maybe 2 or 3 years, I started to having these conversations. And so, and so I said, oh, yeah, we have the Mediterranean diet, and everyone recommends the Mediterranean diet because you have all these anti-inflammatory compounds. But at the end, it's like, how do I implement that Mediterranean diet at the end of the day? So how do I do that? And so not long ago, I have to take a medical leave like last year because I was going through a transition to change my treatment, my sixth time, to a different biologic. But this time I decided not to get depressed, because every time I go through a transitional time for my medications, I feel really sad. I feel like, again, oh my God, did I fail? Did I do something wrong? What is it? But this time I said, no, I'm not going to take that attitude this time. No. So I started reflecting on all these conversations, and I said, no, we need a sustainable but also compassionate approach to eating when we are living with inflammatory arthritis. So that's when I created, or I said, based on the evidence that we have, what about if I call it glow with arthritis? I said, oh, what does glow mean? And I said, okay, now we have sufficient evidence to say that we support and we nourish our gut, because that's where most of our immune cells are held. So if we nourish our gut, most likely we're supporting our immune system. So G goes for grow your gut diversity. So we're going to nourish our gut. Then the L goes for, okay, lower inflammation. But I'm not promising by changing your diet specifically is going to replace your treatment. No, it's by nourishing your body with immune supported nutrients. So we're talking about all the vitamin D's, omega 3s. We're going to talk about zinc, magnesium. So all these specific nutrients that we know are going to support our immune system. Then we're going to talk, oh, what about the O? So the O is about optimizing your energy. So obviously we're drained. That's one of the most significant symptoms we're living with inflammatory arthritis. It is fatigue. So can we optimize our energy while living with inflammatory arthritis? But I also touch on what about your weight and metabolism, because we all have this shift of metabolism when we're living with inflammatory arthritis. And then initially the W, I said, oh, work on sustainable habits. But then I started reflecting. It's like, no, you're going to work with your body. Also, what is your body telling you? So that's what is GLOW. So GLOW is grow your gut diversity, lower inflammation, optimize your energy, and work with your body with compassion. So
Well, and I love that. I'm a sucker for a framework, and especially if it's what's the word for, I have it for Thrive. It's an acronym. It's an acronym. Like the Thrive acronym is like Jewels for Pain and Fatigue, helpful habits, relationships, inner world, and then values and valued activities, and then executive function. And I think it's when you're overwhelmed, like I am, even now, 23 years into living with rheumatoid arthritis and having, done a lot of research into the diet and nutrition space, worked with numerous registered dietitians and a naturopath and a gastroenterologist because of my own additional diagnoses, it still really can be overwhelming. So I think having a framework helps you wrap your mind around it. And I think, I just think it's so great that you're giving people like you said, nourishment over restriction mindset, which is, I think it's really what's missing. Like I've been, facilitating my Rheumatoid support groups over the last 6 years. It was called like 2 different things earlier, but the Rheumatoid Arthritis roadmap, or was called Beginner's Guide to Rheumatoid Arthritis. But anyway, it was the same program, just iterated. And I can't tell you how many times people come in and they're miserable because they restricted a bunch of foods and they still don't feel any better. Or, I mean, we should acknowledge that sometimes for some people, a restrictive diet is very helpful because it is what works in their body. I think an example would be, this is not really like what you mean by restrictive diet 100%, but if you discover that you have celiac disease,
Mm-hmm.
like you have to restrict gluten. You can't have a happy medium there, right? And you will feel so much better when you do. But most of the kinds of my understanding, tell me if I'm wrong, the average person with rheumatoid arthritis, that it's not as black and white as like celiac disease. You're in the middle
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. You're like, oh, these foods are kind of my body sensitive. They're kind of inflammatory to my body. And so a registered dietitian can help you sift through the mess.
It is true. Like that restricted diet, obviously, because for celiac disease, a gluten-free diet is the only treatment. That's
Mhm.
absolutely it. Like it's the only treatment is if you have diabetes and you need insulin, you can't stop like taking your
Right,
insulin, right?
right.
So with celiac disease, that's the case. And I know over the years, because they say, oh, but like celiac disease is an autoimmune disease. And if there's they all autoimmune diseases are connected. So that makes sense for the rest of the autoimmune diseases to restrict gluten because it's inflammatory. And the science of the evidence is not truly strong. And I've always said, from what I read over the years, that, okay, so let's kind of break it out per inflammatory arthritis. In rheumatoid arthritis, the evidence is honestly mostly nil. Typically, patients with rheumatoid arthritis, they don't present with a lot of digestive issues unless they're diagnosed with an additional, like in your case, you have like gastroparesis, right? So that's like an additional diagnosis. But I do see other patients with Sjogren's disease who present with more gluten sensitivity. And at this point, we don't even know exactly if it's really the gluten or is there other proteins that are contained in wheat. So that's what we call it non-celiac gluten/wheat sensitivity.
Yeah, yeah.
So some people, they might actually be tolerant to the gluten. So if it's something has gluten, but not necessarily wheat. So that means that they could probably tolerate barley and rye, but not wheat. You see?
Yeah.
And so it's true. Like, or maybe they have intolerance to like the FODMAPs or foods with are high in FODMAPs. So then you do a temporary restriction, and hopefully that will be with guidance. So then you can reintroduce the foods because when you starve your gut with all the high FODMAPs foods, which typically are high in prebiotics, so they're like typically foods that are high in fiber and they're prebiotics. So you starve your gut out of prebiotics for a longer period of time, you're going to disturb the gut. You're going to cause dysbiosis, and you actually may increase the inflammatory metabolites that come from the gut. And so that's why the guidance with a dietitian, and even if it's someone who understands autoimmune diseases, well, no one understands autoimmune diseases, but at least
Well,
uh,
yes. It's a
can
continuum of
relate,
understanding, continuously
can
evolving. Yeah.
exactly can relate to what it means to like nourishing. So I always go back to that nourishing piece, not so much follow this diet or follow this protocol. Like you said, is I'm kind of going more like for that framework when you
Yeah.
also have a choice. So it's more like a collaborative approach where, okay, this is what I have at home. Okay, what are the things that I can maybe substitute based on what you're recommending? And so when I run, let's say like a small program over the holidays, which is really crazy because I was, who's going to participate in like a
Yeah.
nutrition program over the holidays? And they did. Like I have a group of 10 people and most of them participated at their own pace. And they found it helpful, the fact that, oh, you're not telling me I need to follow a meal plan. I said, this is the structure, right? So we're going to prioritize all the foods that contain anti-inflammatory compounds. Look, that's different saying to me, I'm suggesting an anti-inflammatory diet. I'm saying
Mhm.
we're going to prioritize foods that are high anti-inflammatory properties, right? So, and then we're going to really highlight foods that are high in fiber because typically the typical American or Canadian, they only consume like up to 12 grams of fiber, and we need up to 25 to 30 grams of fiber.
Oh,
And so
yes.
even just working up on that just fiber component, adding more plant foods into your diet, you're making a huge difference. You don't have to change everything overnight. And so that's what I aim to do over the next years. I'm like, my cousin goes to Cristina, like, you are defying what dietitians do.
Oh, defying? Like,
You said like, yeah, you said like you are changing how dietitian works, because you
Or
go
read
to a
it.
dietitian and they just
Okay.
give you a list of things, list of foods, list of supplements, but they're not taking the time to understand your environment and what you're able to change or what you want to change.
Oh my gosh, 100%. I think it's so much more sustainable the way that you're doing it. And I think a lot of people, it's like I say with occupational therapy or physical therapy too, and registered dietitians, unfortunately, there is like a quality control issue at times. There are people who say, well, you said I should go, or you said that there's a lot of great things that you can learn from physical therapy or occupational therapy or registered dietitians. And I went to one and all they did was just hand me this, generic handout that's been the same since 1982 of you should eat this and you shouldn't eat this, or you should do these exercises at home. And it's like a good practitioner actually works within, you said, environment, context, within your own psychological history and relationship to food. A lot of people, I always say this when we talk about nutrition, there is, and I don't want to get us off track, but there, there is an eating disorder that is actually people don't recognize often in the autoimmune community because it sounds like a good thing at first, but it's orthorexia, which is where people have an unhealthy, psychologically, obsession over only eating healthy or clean foods. And that actually becomes a true like mental illness. And they can become, effectively like anorexic, but it's called orthorexia because it's a little different psychologically and that requires treatment. And, it's really important to not just look at this in like a vacuum of these are just the foods you should or shouldn't eat. It's teaching people to fit it into their own lives. Anyway, I'm not reaching to the choir here.
If you have ever felt completely lost or utterly alone while trying to navigate real life with rheumatic disease, listen up. I am here for you. I created an educational program to help you go from overwhelmed to confident, supported, and connected in a matter of weeks. And it's called Room to Thrive. After earning a master's in occupational therapy and completing hundreds of hours of additional training, I created a step-by-step guide to help you truly thrive with rheumatic disease. This is the only program I know of that's designed to improve quality of life for people living with inflammatory, autoimmune forms of arthritis, like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, non-radiographic axial spondyloarthritis, Sjogren's disease, and more. During the self-paced lessons, you'll learn how to manage pain and fatigue, cope with stress, navigate relationships, and continue doing the things that matter to you and bring you joy. The goal is really to help you improve your quality of life and learn how to thrive with your rheumatic disease right now, rather than waiting for a distant day when it might be cured or healed. I really created the down-to-earth, practical, heartfelt resource I wish I had had when I was first diagnosed at age 20. If you want even more in-depth support, you can join the 12-week Room to Thrive virtual support group, where you'll be surrounded by people who actually get what you're going through, people who will provide the encouragement, validation, and support that you deserve. Each group is expertly moderated, so you don't have to worry about the kind of misinformation that spreads like wildfire in the free-for-all social media groups. If you're on the fence, don't just take my word for it. Here's what Katie had to say in March 2023. I was lost and overwhelmed with my RA diagnosis. It felt overwhelming to know what to read, what to do, how to spend my energy trying to research on the internet. Room to Thrive did that for me. It's been like getting a crash course in my diagnosis along with a community who gets it. To see all the details, including the dates for the next support groups, go to the link in the show notes or bit.ly/thriveroom with a capital T and capital R. You can also just email me anytime at info@myarthritislife.net. And don't delay if you're interested, because each group is capped at 16 people or less in order to make a small, intimate group atmosphere. Thanks so much for your time, and I can't wait to get started with the next groups. And I can't wait for those of you who are interested in the self-paced option to go ahead and join that at any time. Bye-bye for now.
No, but I think it makes total sense. And in fact, like recently, the US, they launched the dietary guidelines for Americans. And I know there has been a lot of conversations around that. And I was like, okay, but let's see. Like, first of all, I don't like pyramids. Even when I talk about the Mediterranean diet, I don't basically like pyramids because it's just giving like hierarchy to certain foods. And I understand that certain foods have like more components, but also we need to acknowledge that certain foods are contain lots of nutrients. So I'll give you an example. Legumes, like think of beans, chickpeas, lentils. Those are packed with fiber, low glycemic carbohydrates, protein. You have micronutrients, vitamin B6. So they're all going to work in synergy. So to put them really in just one place. So when I started kind of developing this framework, I developed like a circular type of plate in a way where you can see synergy from all these different foods. Like you said, oh, you want like gut friendly foods. And so you're going for fermented foods. And some of the fermented foods are contain like a yogurt, right? That's like probably one of the most common fermented foods that we have. But yogurt is also rich in protein, calcium, right? And other nutrients. So if we start understanding food that they work in synergy, they work together. And right in the middle of it, and I said, we are allowed like a little bit of indulgence, a little bit of cupcake here and there. It's okay
Yes.
too, right? We need to live. But then around all this, I said, okay, to also be compassionate, baby. You need to adapt your nutrition or the way you're doing things on flare up days and not to feel guilty about it. So maybe that day is the day that you do go for like a smoothie, or you're gonna use your more canned beans or more of these foods that are convenience foods, but that you can prepare something that is just easy. I promote a lot like my bento boxes when I'm in the summertime. So there's really no cooking involved or just very minimum. So let's say one that I really is like take edamame, just edamame, like a frozen edamame, and you heat it up in a microwave. It's like about 2 minutes. Then you salt it. You can maybe drizzle a little bit of sesame seed oil. You sprinkle sesame seed. Then you cut up some maybe cucumbers or any veggies that you have on hand. And if you also have hummus, like why not? If you have, you can also now can purchase like hummus that have low preservatives and some fruit and nuts. Was there a lot of cooking involved? No, but you still nourish it yourself, right? So that's what I'm trying to really show people, that you still can be nourished without any like a lot of elaborate meals that we're used to.
Yes. I mean,
Mhm.
I remember you, and I think it was also Jennifer Thorani was where you helped me feel less guilty using, frozen vegetables. 'Cause you were like, that's not a highly processed food just because it's frozen. You're not losing something in it. And the simplest thing for me has been making like green smoothies in the morning. I don't even have to make them every day because I have these super cube containers where you like make a big smoothie and you put it in the containers and you only have to mix it in the blender in the morning. And I put chia seeds in there because so I can't tolerate legumes, but for some reason, chia seeds, which you would think would be harder to digest because they have that insoluble fiber, in the middle, they are fine. Like I'm totally fine with chia seeds. It's like at a certain point, it doesn't even make sense in your head. You just have to know what you can and can't eat, or what your body is tolerating that day. But, and I can tolerate like a small amount of spinach and almond yogurt and some protein powder. And like I put some other stuff in there, like a little bit of turmeric and ginger. And it just feels so good to start my day like that. And it's not, again, like I have to be some elaborate chef. Yeah. And that's really good. And yeah, I wanted to really quickly, before we talk more, define a couple terms just in case people are kind of new to this area. What does a gut health actually mean? Like, where does the gut start and stop? And what is the microbiome also? Just
Pues,
little
yeah,
questions. Just,
it is a little question. And, and gut health is really very personal, right? It's what defines gut health. If you have, let's say, irritable bowel syndrome, that means to you that gut health is that you want to be symptom free, right? So it really that gut health is depending on what you're experiencing. What I define a gut, like supporting your gut health while living with inflammatory arthritis, is that we want to increase diversity of the gut microbiome, which is the trillion of bacteria, fungi, viruses. It's not just bacteria that are in your gut. right? Or usually the large intestine. And that they are so independently able to ferment fibers and produce metabolites like short chain fatty acids, specifically butyrate, that it has been shown to actually nourish the gut barrier or the gut lining. So to make it kind of stronger and also tighter. So there's less toxins maybe traveling through the bloodstream and maybe triggering inflammation. But also these bacteria are responsible for producing vitamin K, and so also other vitamins that are important. So the idea of nourishing the bacteria or giving them the food that they need is what is important when it comes to when I frame it into the gut health for inflammatory arthritis, because I will say like probably all of them, all of us who have inflammatory arthritis and autoimmune disease, we present with dysbiosis, or that means that the alteration of that gut microbiota, which we probably have more harmful bacteria and less beneficial bacteria, but it's part of the disease process. And it has been discovered before even presenting the disease. You already have dysbiosis. But then we are put onto medications like methotrexate, for instance, or sulfasalazine, and they actually have interaction with bacteria. And that's one of the ways they modulate inflammation. And so that's why when you're put onto these medications, guess what happens? The inflammation starts to go down. So that's why we're starting to see, oh, maybe that's where we have that connection of gut health and inflammation. In fact, it was a very fascinating trial that I saw at the ACR, of an abstract from the ACR in 2025. And so they did a trial with inulin. So if you ever heard of like benefiber, the type of fiber that is in benefiber. So they tried like 12 grams of inulin for 12 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And they specifically saw patients who had rheumatoid arthritis and were taking methotrexate. So methotrexate. And they looked like the methotrexate worked better for the group that was taking inulin.
That's
And
amazing.
so that's when they're starting to see, okay, so maybe that's a piece of information that we are now need to pay more attention when it comes to modulating inflammation. From the nutrition part, I cannot say, oh, go take a stool sample and we're going to look at all your microbiome and see how is it looking. It's right now, we don't really have that technology to say. You might see patterns, but things change. Like everything that you eat within a week is going to change. So what you saw this week and you take a stool sample next week might might be different, right?
Yeah, that's
So
fascinating. Yeah, and I just want to add, I want to make sure people understand, like methotrexate, it doesn't just affect the gut microbiome, right? It like directly attaches to like T cells and B cells and reduces cytokines in your system. So but those things are also, everyone's kind of talking about the gut microbiome now, and in rheumatology you're interested in it because it's clear that these medications, like you said, are having an effect. I don't want anyone to hear that and think that's the only thing that's going on.
Yeah.
And the gut microbiome, this is, I always try to say this because I didn't realize this. Gut microbiome, at least from what other people told me, maybe you agree, it's literally from your mouth to your anus. Like in terms of that's where these things are living. So I had that aha moment of that's one of the reasons dental health is so important when you have rheumatoid arthritis, because you're more likely to get like gum disease and stuff like that. And there's a relationship between gum disease and heart disease, but also it's part of your microbiome. Let me know, is that right?
They do have it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was
No,
say,
and it's true. And you also have, that is true. It's just the function of that microbiota is different wherever it's placed. So the oral microbiome has maybe a different function. Then you have the skin microbiome too. So we do have, basically we're more bacteria than cells.
I forgot we have a skin. My son was telling me about that because they're doing a whole unit in his school on immunology. And your skin is like a barrier to, and I knew that, but he was talking about the details with what's living on your skin. I was like, whoa. Yeah. So sorry.
No, and the reason why Dr. Lobo, that she wanted to open my mind, and I said, well, if you want to nourish your skin, I do mask with Greek yogurt and honey. And so to nourish my skin and my face. And I said, well, that makes sense, right? Like if I would be nourished and if it's a part of your skin, a barrier, why not nourish it with actual food with real
Right,
food.
right.
So yeah, it's a conversation that can go on. It's fascinating now because we're starting to understand, but also to make clear that there's no such thing as like, oh, we had the microbiome diet. That
Right,
is
right,
bullshit.
right.
So don't fall for that. I don't usually recommend like the expensive food sensitivity tests because they are not really validated even by the allergy associations or medical associations because they technically are not going to test every single light sensitivity. They are typically show the foods that you're more commonly consume, and those are they restrict. Also, the stool test that they send, the GI maps, we still don't understand a lot. And for you to spend like $500, $600, it's not worth it. Like, why not spend that money and actually nourishing yourself with the
Yeah.
food that you have access to and be consistent?
And I think, okay, that zooms out. We wanted to zoom back to the big picture of not just nourishing your body, but nourishing yourself psychologically with and healing your relationship to food. Because pretty much everyone has some baggage. Everyone I know in the autoimmune world has some sort of baggage, or maybe just anxiety at times around eating and around, feeling guilty for this isn't a good, oh, I'm having chocolate, but and now I'm stressed out about it because I know that chocolate's not quote unquote, good for me because it has sugar or whatever. I think, that I've had this like weird, I'm not like a rebel in most cases, but with nutrition, I definitely had times where I'm like, I don't care. I'm just going to eat a candy bar and nobody can stop me, Like, how I'm trying to think of like coherent question to ask you about this, but I feel like, okay, here's how I see it. When you have an autoimmune condition or chronic illness in general, food is so tantalizing because it's something that it feels like you can control and you do it multiple times a day. And so, you know, people get sucked into this idea that, oh, all I have to do is just eat the perfect diet. And I think that's kind of the most predominant thing, at least I've seen in my groups, people feeling really burned out by that. They've
Mhm.
lost money, they've lost time. And it doesn't often, in when they've gone into some sort of really restrictive diet, it often doesn't give you the bang for the buck that you're looking for. But like, how are you helping people restore their relationship to food, whether it's from the feeling shame or guilt or fear, food phobias and stuff like that? And obviously your
I
method helps, but and yeah.
No, but I think this is I usually use a slide when I do presentations when it comes about restricted diets and why sustainable eating matters. And it's because just think about like the sustainability. Your chronic illness didn't show up overnight. That was also chronic and systemic. So when it comes to nutrition, it also should be systemic. It should be sustainable, right? And so when you hear approaches like, oh no, but I take the carnivore diet, but then following month to, oh, the severe carbohydrate restriction, or just do like a blanket elimination of nightshades or unsupervised elimination diets. And you just feel tempted because, like you said, we want to have some sort of control. If I can control this, I will be doing something for myself when I'm helping. And for some people, it works because, yeah, maybe they were following like a Western diet, like full of ultra processed foods and refined sugars and all these kind of foods that we know are going to cause inflammation. So when you change and you restrict those diets and you change that, your body always going to feel better, right? And that's what people don't think about. It's not just elimination, but also the shift of those lifestyle changes. But then some people, that's what they feel like a short term improvement. But then over time, it may worsen your fatigue. It may make you tired. I'm eating the same things over and over. Like, where is the joy of it? It may reduce your muscle mass. So you're causing like sarcopenia. So again, you're going to reduce tolerance to exercise. So now you're not really affecting your nourishment, but you're also affecting your physical function. Like I said, you lower your gut microbial diversity and also the risk of nutritional deficiencies, like most specifically iron, vitamin B12, right? Calcium that are essential for you. And so, and we also now know, and it happens a lot during the pandemic, that these highly restricted diets can impact your mental health, right? It's that constant pressure that, oh, I have to change it. And then that's increased food-related stress that you see that chocolate, especially during the holidays. I always start conversations like, what am I going to do with the candy? Or there's always some specialty. Now it's going to come, maybe it's Mother's Day, and then we're going to be filled with chocolate. And so am I going to reject my son's box of chocolates because of, excuse me, I'm doing an elimination diet? I think what we need to look into, okay, so how am I going to enjoy those chocolates? Am I going to just kind of juggle them down, or am I going to take my time to just truly savor that chocolate? Taking my time, feeling the texture, not being distracted, really enjoying it. And maybe by the end of you like eating that piece of chocolate, you might not even want the next one because you already kind of, I got my fix, I'm good. And that's what I always encourage my patients before like trying to, I'm just cutting everything out. And I said, let's just reduce the amount. But when you eat it consciously, like mindfully.
Love that. Yeah, 100%. And this, as we know from many studies over many years, stress is also inflammatory too. So sometimes people are so stressed with their diet, they're eating the right, quote unquote, right foods for their body, like objectively, but then they're so stressed about it that they're still getting the inflammation at the end of the day. They may be eating anti-inflammatory, but then they're inflaming themselves through the additional stress. So it's finding a balance. I know that word is overused, but I think that's so important. And I love the idea of making it sustainable. It's not a fad, right?
No, it's like if you do it consistently, even if you find like this month you're going to consistently have that balanced breakfast, you're going to work and you're going to have your breakfast like with the whole grains and fruit and nuts and maybe some spices like cinnamon, even if it's that one oatmeal, like you want to make it like super kind of rich of antioxidants and you do it consistently for over 2 weeks, then you're going to feel, okay, I do the breakfast. Maybe I can add a snack that is going to be equally balanced. And so just kind of work it up that it becomes just part of you. I don't know what happened to my son. He comes, Mommy, can you make me that healthy zucchini chocolate bread? And I was like, okay. And so for some reason, like he really enjoys it. It's just he had zucchini, banana, but I do add the chocolate because he loves his chocolate. But then he had the treat and he's satisfied. And I think we need to learn from children. They really listen to
Yes.
their hunger cues and I'm done. That's it.
Oh my gosh. As a former pediatric occupational therapist, cannot agree with that more. It's really fascinating how kids, they naturally stop when their body is full and listen to their bodies. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we get to a couple of the concluding questions?
Well, I just want to always one of the things that drives me and I learned and I go with it every day is just that just go over like focus on progress over perfection. There's no such thing as a perfect diet or the perfect supplement, which by the way, they're unregulated. So what you do with supplements is something that you also need to assess because when you live with chronic illnesses, like consistency matters, right? Even on the low days, the flare up days, if you do something that you know is going to nourish your body, that's also important. And those small supported habits over time is what's going to make a difference. It's not going to be those huge elimination diets. And focus, and one thing I really want to say, and I learned over the past 20 years, is to focus on what is affecting your quality of life at the most. So I'll give you an example. 20 years ago, my priority was to not feel pain. I was in excruciating pain. I don't remember the fatigue or anything. I remember the pain that will not allow me to even take a shower or feed myself. Well, now the pain is not a priority. Like it's there, it kind of lingers, but it's not a priority. Now my priority is fatigue. That just that sudden fatigue that I feel out of nowhere. And that really impacts my daily life, right? Or going to work and the brain fog. Those are my priorities right now. I'm not going to focus on the rest of all side effects of medications or the side effects of because they're not really affecting my life right now. So
Right.
I think that even over time, your priorities in your own health journey change.
And
Yeah.
something that my registered dietitian told me is that, your gut sensitivities also can change over time, which and
Mhm.
it sounds so obvious when you say it, but I'm saying it in case anyone else was like me, because I kind of, my gut and my GI system has gone through a lot of changes and different things over the years, like getting those small intestinal bacterial overgrowth and then doing the low FODMAP diet for that specifically. And I've learned there were certain things I used to be really sensitive to, gluten, and now I can tolerate small amounts of it. So realizing that I think there's a desire, at least for me, if you're kind of like a perfectionist or you seek control, you're like, I just need to find a list of foods. And I'm going to stick with this the rest of my life. And it's just like the medications, your body can change, right? Sometimes you need to, we both know that. It's so funny you say you're on your sixth one, 'cause I'm on my fifth biologic. So I'm just right behind you. I'll be on the sixth. Maybe next time we talk. And just a lot, but just a couple concluding questions. I'm not going to go through the whole list of the rapid fire questions, but I'd love to hear what book you've been reading or loving lately.
Well, I've been listening to because I don't think I can concentrate on reading books for a long time these days. So I listen to them. So I've been listening to the Menopause Manifesto by Dr. Jen Gunter.
I am in the middle of that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe because you're going through the changes, and but I think what I'm understanding is still kind of maybe like a quarter of it, but I'm loving that how it reframes like menopause and the perimenopause as a normal life transition rather than something women should be ashamed of or be hiding from. And what many women actually need is something much simpler than more powerful. It's like timely, comprehensive medical assessment that there is a practitioner that actually believes in you and the changes. And it gets a little trickier with women with autoimmune diseases because they either may blame the autoimmune disease or the changes are maybe your autoimmune disease is actually getting worse, but they're blaming it to the perimenopause or the menopause. And so it's to just provide women with the evidence-based information to support them without shame. And that's what I said that I think that the message also applies to autoimmune diseases because we deserve to feel heard, supported, and empowered with evidence and with compassion. I think we need compassion. That was kind of also the end of my whole thing is here's someone who actually talks to you with love and care.
That is across the board in medicine. We need it. This is tip of my tongue because I just went to get I get my teeth cleaned every 4 months because of my risk factors with having RA and my GI issues that make me have to eat constantly, small amounts, which leave the food on my teeth, blah, blah, blah. And the dental hygienist, it was a new person there and she was so compassionate and she was so validating, your hygiene is amazing. You're doing everything you can. And you have these risk factors. It's just you kind of drew the short stick. It's not fair, but I'm not judging you or blaming you. That it's it goes so far, as the patient. I feel like that's just dental hygiene. I mean, in nutrition, I'm sure it's even more. I think a lot of patients are scared to even go see a registered dietitian because they're like, oh, they're just going to judge me or say that I'm eating the wrong thing or, be sometimes I think certain health professions get a reputation, dermatologists have the reputation for being the beautiful people that are oh, my skin's glowing. And your dietitians are oh, they're people who only eat organic. And no, but registered dietitians are human beings that you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's true. We also go through transitions. We may gain weight, and then we can't even control it because even obesity is not so simple of eating calories or just burning them. And that could be another topic which I'm really interested in right now. But it's true.
And I want to make sure I'm going to ask you the last question, which is hilarious that it's on the rapid fire questions. And then I want to make sure to let you talk about your Spanish language podcast because that's about immune stuff because that's so important. But first, I know I've asked you this before, but it's really good to hear how people's answers might change given over time and the day. What does it mean to you to live a good life and thrive with rheumatoid arthritis and Sjogren's disease?
Hard
question.
It's a hard.
I know.
I answered somehow before as to be aware of your changes and be aware of your current priorities. I think living in the present time as to what is happening to you right now, I cannot think of, oh, I live with pain. I'm currently living with a little bit of pain, but it's not really interfering with my life. So it's really recognizing what are the things that maybe you need to work on, but also recognizing the things that are bringing you joy. Like recently, I'm really enjoying developing all these programs that I'm saying, hey, this is my framework. And because I learned it from like lived experience and clinical expertise, and it's bringing me joy. I didn't have that maybe 5 years ago, but now it all starting to make sense. So I think it's just bringing to the present time and see what is meaningful to you. It is meaningful to, for me, I don't make plans for 5 years. Oh, what are you going to do in 5 years? I said, no, I do plans for 2 years now because I don't know. Maybe that's how long my medication right now is
Mm.
gonna take effect or it's gonna work. So I try to be a little bit more realistic and really kind to myself and what I can do and also what I cannot do and say no. And I said, no, I can't do that. I feel more confident in saying those things now.
Me too. Thinking about being in your mid-40s, it gets a lot easier and to say no. And I think what it's funny in occupational therapy, one of the things that I heard over and over again in school, which was now like 14 years ago, but was, helping people engage in meaningful activities, and it's like defining what's meaningful to you and being able to engage with what's meaningful in the present moment, like you said, without being overly like, and that improves your quality of life and it helps you not get down these rabbit holes of, oh, like I'm broken in some way or something like that. So anyway, I love that. That's great. And
Yeah.
I'm going to put a whole bunch of links in the show notes that are always on the Arthritis Life website, but where can people find you online if they want to follow you a second?
Oh, well, they can find me at my website, arthritisdietitian.com. You find me on Instagram at arthritisdietitian, and I'm on TikTok, but I'm on TikTok, I'm speaking mostly in Spanish. And so where I share more of my life, living my life with Sjogren's and rheumatoid arthritis. And that's been fascinating actually to connect with the Spanish speaking community. And it also just kind of be aware of some programs that you might be interested in. So I'm excited to speak at the upcoming Global Spondyloarthritis Summit that is organized by the Spondylitis Association of America and is happening on May 2nd. So maybe you can look it up and that they're doing like a great summit. And here's what I'm gonna even talk more about going beyond the anti-inflammatory diet and more about these practical strategies and soon, and I will share that with Cheryl, I'm like releasing my Glow with Arthritis Kitchen Refresh. So it's like a 5-day strategies that you can use to start changing your environment because I think that's where it starts in your kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And
So
what's your Spanish language podcast is Inmunidad Consciente? Is that how you pronounce it?
Inmunidad Consciente. And I co-hosted with another dietitian. He's from Spain. And we are focusing on, so we are raising awareness about living well with autoimmune diseases. And we have been bringing guests, also patients. And since like nutrition is also such a, like a hot topic, we have been doing like series of different topics. One is an anti-inflammatory diet, inflammation, inflammatory foods, and we're gonna start doing those sections. But yeah, we're excited. It's slowly growing. We have over like 250 subscribers on YouTube, and it's like so excited. Yeah.
That's so great. It's so needed. That's one of my dreams would be to like translate my program into Spanish as well. And I think just the more, like you said, like the goal of access, right? Improving access to this information, access to these programs. It's so beautiful. So I'll put links to all that in the show notes. And just thank you so much for coming on and yet again and helping demystify, the area of nutrition for rheumatic disease, but also help really go beyond just demystifying like the science and help, reflect on how can people actually have a sustainable, healthy relationship with food psychologically. I think that's so, so important. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Cheryl.
Let's have
Thank you so much for listening. This podcast is supported by Room to Thrive, an educational program I created to help empower you to live life to the fullest with rheumatic disease. In the program, you're going to learn evidence-based tools for managing all the ways rheumatic disease affects your life. And my goal is to help you go from overwhelmed to confident, supported, and connected in a matter of weeks. You can go through the pre-recorded modules on your own in the self-paced course, or you can take the course along with a robust support group of new arthritis friends to support you and cheerlead you along the way. Learn more in the link in my show notes, or you can always go to www.myarthritislife.net. And if you like this podcast, I'd be so honored if you took the time to rate and review it. I also encourage you to share it with anyone you know who might benefit from it. I also want to remind you that you can find full transcripts, videos, and detailed show notes with hyperlinks for each episode on the Arthritis Life website, plus full episode videos on the Arthritis Life YouTube channel. If you have any ideas for content for future episodes, or you want to share your story on the podcast, please send me, Cheryl, an email at info@myarthritislife.net. I can't wait to hear from you, and thanks so much again for your time.